The Corleone crime syndicate made more money than the 5 families put together in a single day. Welcome to the Savage Nation. I could talk about a lot of things. I'm going to give you an example of what I was going to talk about today, and then you're going to see what I'm actually going to talk about. Okay? You want to see where I was this morning? See, this is the problem with a show at 6 o'clock at night in San Francisco, 8 o'clock at night in the East Coast. I start in the morning with my mind on one set of problems, issues that I think are great. By the time the night comes around, it's a different story. For example, you know who Hegel is. He didn't invent the bagel. He may as well have been in a bagel bakery, but instead he was picked by Obama from a bagel bakery to run the U.S. Defense Department. So Hegel says a full U.S. retreat from Afghanistan is a very real possibility. Really. And he said that, I believe, on, there it is, on Meet the Nation or something. CBS's Meet the Nation, I believe. Face the Nation. Hate the Nation. It aired on CBS's Deceive the Nation yesterday. And do we have that soundbite? The retreat sound? Yeah, play the soundbite. You'll hear what I'm talking about.
If we don't have a bilateral security agreement, which I've noted, that means we can't protect our forces that would be here after 2014. No international partners will come. Afghanistan essentially will be alone. But we have no other option. We can't plan for, the president can't commit American forces or the United States of America, no other country can, unless we are protected with an agreement.
Okay, now go to clip 2.
You can use any term you want, retreat or not renewing our efforts here post-2014. You can say it any way you want, but what I'm saying is unless we have the security of an agreement to protect our forces, then we'll have no choice. We will not be able to stay.
Okay, so he's saying we're going to leave Afghanistan in 2014. The question is, should the U.S. pull all troops from Afghanistan? Simple question. 855-407, I forgot my number, 855-400-7282 is the phone number on the Savage Nation. Should the U.S. pull all troops from Afghanistan? I say yes. We should have done it a long time ago. I still do not know why we are in Afghanistan. I mean, I'll ask the question as graffiti. Make believe I'm writing graffiti on the side of a wall. Why are we in Afghanistan? No answer. So that was one question for the morning. And another question that came up this morning is this one, and I thought this would be of appeal to many of you because I know it bothers many of you. The myth of the American dream. It's a leftist argument that there's no longer any upward mobility in America, which is actually a lie. And it says it's easy to rise above the class you're born into in countries like Japan, Germany, Australia, and the Scandinavian nations, according to research from the University of Ottawa economist and current Russell Sage Foundation fellow Miles Korak. The fact is, that's a skewed statement that you can't rise above the class you're born into in America. It's because we are stuck with a perennial underclass. We are buried with 30 million illegal aliens who don't belong here to begin with. So if you throw them into the mix, of course it looks like nobody could move up. Wait, it goes even worse. It says the more unequal a society is, the greater the chance that the children will be stuck in the same sphere. That wasn't true when I was the son of an immigrant. How is that possible? My father never went to college. I struggled. I got into college. I went to graduate school on my own. What do you mean? You're supposed to give it to the children of the poor now? Is that it? Wait till you hear the rest of the arguments. This is because wealthy families are able to provide things like tutors and extracurricular activities and the time to pursue them that poorer families often cannot. Well, the poorer families can engage in sports such as knockout games. Instead of studying, they're practicing knockout games in the streets of America, and I'm supposed to worry about them? Are you crazy? The rich can pump a lot more money into their kids' future, said Korak. This explains why America is no longer a land of opportunity, said Korak. So I will ask you, the listeners of the Savage Nation, is America still upwardly mobile? Have you done better than your parents? I think it's a very good question. Wait, it even gets worse. Listen to the rest of this crap that this leftist moron from the University of Ottawa, wherever that is, says. Having a stable home life is also associated with the ability to climb the economic ladder, said Korak. Wait a minute. So in other words, if you have decent parents who don't run around, who don't smoke crack, who don't drink to excess, and they stay home and they teach you to do your homework, that's a negative? Communism, Marxism. Okay, listen to the rest of this idiocy. The United States tends to have higher rates of divorce, single-parent homes, and teenage pregnancy than many other industrialized countries. No kidding. Why don't you walk around San Francisco like I do and see the 15-year-old gangbangers with their girlfriends age 14 with 2 children in a carriage because they're welfare recipients? What do you think it does to me as a hardworking American to see children with babies on welfare? That's not my fault. It's the fault of a society that rewards this kind of behavior with a welfare check. So now they're condemning a stable home life as that of a rich person. It gets even better. Countries that redistribute wealth, though, say through higher taxes on the rich and more spending on the poor. Really? What, teach them how to knock out people in the street even faster? Tend to have greater social mobility, said Francisco Ferreira, an economist at the World Bank, another Marxist organization, the World Bank. Critics say that there's not enough education spending. You're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you, what these communists are saying now. Critics have long contended that the U.S. system for funding education, where school funding is largely based on property taxes, perpetuates inequality far more so than a system which taxes the whole country for schools, then redistributes that money to the districts that are most needy. Do you have any idea what they're proposing here? You work your whole life to climb out of a gutter. You work your whole life to run away from people you don't want to be around because they're bums and criminals and drug addicts and welfare leeches. And you move to a middle-class little house that you pay for so your children can go to a better school. And now the communists want to take that away from you and say to you, your children don't deserve a better school. That's racist of you. We need to redistribute your taxes. Well, let me give you one example, because it's an example that everyone has forgotten. Across the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco, is a little town called Marin City. It is largely African-American because it was peopled, or shall I say populated, during World War II, when many Southern African-Americans were brought out to work in the shipyards and build our merchant fleet at the Kaiser shipyards in Oakland and in Sausalito. And then, of course, it became somewhat ghettoized in many ways. Well, for years it went on that they weren't getting enough education money in this largely African-American community. That was the big lie. They weren't getting enough education money. So they made the whites who run the county guiltier and guiltier by the year until eventually the taxes were redistributed in this county, and the amount of money spent on each pupil in Marin City, California was, at the last I checked, $13,000 to $15,000 a year per student. It was about at the highest level of any county in the state that I know of. And the test scores continued to drop. So who do you blame now? Spend more money and they'll do better? What do you want me to do? It's up to the parents to teach the children to buckle down and do their work. Like my mother taught me. If you want to get somewhere in America, work hard. No one's going to give you anything. Otherwise, you're going to wind up as a manual laborer. It was that simple. My father used to say it in another way. Either you can work with your behind or your brain when you get older. It's that simple. And that's what the truth is. And unless you have people telling you the truth, you'll continuously wind up in the lower class or the underclass or whatever way, any way you want to spin it. I don't even want to talk about it. So you see, in the morning, I wanted to talk about is America still upwardly mobile? Should we pull the U.S. troops out of Afghanistan? Now, you can call on those topics, but there's another topic that came up that I really want to talk about. And it's not that Vladimir Putin dissolves Russia's news networks. No. It's not that we have a bumper grain harvest that's overwhelming the trains in America. That's a great story. It explains how Buffett continues to make his fortune by blocking the Keystone Oil pipeline and not using his trains to transport oil from Canada. Oh, that's a glorious one. But I don't want to talk about that one. I want to talk about short men, because there was an interesting article about shorties in the New York Post. Hospital waste dumped in oceans? No. 10 things to know about post-Mandela South Africa? No, I can't find the shorty. Here it is. It was a New York Post story that it made me laugh this morning. I got to read it to you, the whole story. Short men don't stack up with New York City women. It was written by Gary Buiso, New York Post. And here's what he wrote. It's a tall order dating women in the Big Apple. The likelihood that a man under 5'9" is contacted by a Manhattan or Bronx woman online is a scant 1.2%, with Brooklyn coming in with a paltry 2.4% response rate, according to a study conducted by a dating site which analyzed 50,000 interactions over 2 months. Staten Island shorties had just a 4.1 chance of being chatted up online, and Queens mini-men rounded out the boroughs with a 5.4%. Josh Fisher, who led the study, said, people in bigger cities have more options and tend to be pickier. Then he went on to write this. Brooklynite Nick Rizzo knows the sting of big a tree all too well. It's just a fact of life that most women taller than me aren't willing to date me, confessed the 5'7", 28-year-old, who said he has found that women are often uncomfortable when their date doesn't measure up. Quote, maybe they're worried about how it will look to other people, he added, but there's hope across the Hudson. Shorties in Jersey City have a 7.6% likelihood of being contacted by the fairest sex, blah, blah, blah. And then they go on about in New Jersey, the women will date short men. Of course, the reason for that is they have no choice but to date whatever they can. So a 58-year-old, a 28-year-old Jersey City woman who's 5 feet in height, who doesn't mind dating a short man, said this. She said, watch out, short men don't always have Napoleon complexes, but definitely steer clear of the ones that do. It worked for Napoleon. I don't know what she's talking about. It works for Hollywood. I mean, what do you think Hollywood's run by? Giants? They're run by shorties who have Napoleon complexes. It works for them. They do very well with women. That's an add-on by me. Here's the punchline. Some short men don't help their cause. Quote, I met an online date at a bar in Manhattan. He was already seated when I walked in, said a 5'6", 42-year-old Chelsea woman. We had a nice time chatting over a glass of wine, but when I got up to leave, I saw that the man who had said he was 5'6" was actually 5.0. I must have had a fairly surprised look on my face. To my horror, he said, I can climb you like a tree. I made a hasty exit. Experts said size matters because of evolution. Quote, cross-culturally, women show a preference for taller mates, said Dr. Jill Shapiro, a biological anthropologist at Columbia University. She said, quote, most people think it's related to sexual selection. Taller men are perceived to be healthier, be better providers. By being tall, you are signaling that you have good genes. So what's the matter with Jersey City women? Evolutionarily speaking, a lot, said Shapiro. Quote, it's going against the normal pattern for most humans, she said. Now, I could ask you a couple of questions, which I think I will. Women, would you date a man shorter than you? Men, would you date a woman taller than you? Well, no, don't answer that, men. Short men will date anything. Women, do you avoid men shorter than you, and why? It's a stupid question in some ways because it's a very cultural thing. But it's a very interesting topic. Short men don't stack up with New York City women. What questions can we ask, or what would you like to say on that topic? Should we be pulling out of Afghanistan? And is America still upwardly mobile? The phone number is 855-400-SAVAGE. Be here or be nowhere.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE. 855-400-7282. Savage.